Today, we're digging into the story of one of the most fascinating figures in American history. I mean, here's a guy who was a legendary military hero, but then turned around and called himself, in his own words, a gangster for capitalism. This is the truly wild story of Major General Smedley Butler. For the first half of his life, Smedley Butler was, well, he was the real deal, the quintessential American warrior. Just look at this photo from about 1929. This man was a living legend. At the time of his death, the most decorated Marine in the entire country, famous for his incredible bravery on battlefields all over the world. And then, there's the second half of his life. After he retired, this celebrated hero completely flipped the script and said this. He said his entire career was nothing more than a racket. I mean, what a statement. It just completely shatters the image of the man you just saw. So, that's really the big question we're tackling today, isn't it? How does America's greatest warrior end up as its biggest critic? How did he come to believe that he'd spend his whole life fighting for all the wrong reasons? It is an absolutely incredible journey. You know, to really get the critic, you have to understand the warrior first. So let's hit rewind and take a look at the first life of Smedley Butler, the Maverick Marine. His career, which spanned 34 years, honestly sounds like something out of an adventure novel. Get this, he lied about his age just to get into the Spanish-American War when he was only 16. He was wounded in China during the Boxer Rebellion while saving another officer. He led interventions all over Central America during the Banana Wars. And in World War I, he was commanding a massive camp in France. The guy was everywhere. And listen, he wasn't just there. He was unbelievably brave. He was awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for valor, not once, but twice. And to put that into perspective, he's still one of only 2 Marines in all of history to ever pull that off. These 2 pictures really tell the story, don't they? On the left, you've got this fresh-faced teenager, a brand new lieutenant starting his career. And on the right, you see the hardened Major General, 3 decades later. His entire life was the Marine Corps. But Butler's story wasn't just a straight line of heroism and medals. No. His outspoken, kind of rebellious personality often made him butt heads with the same establishment that was pinning those medals on his chest. And this is where we start to see the cracks forming. So let's just quickly look at what earned him those medals of honor. In Veracruz, Mexico, it was for his incredible leadership and courage under fire. Then, just a year later in Haiti, he led this insane charge to take a rebel fortress. It was an action that took less than 20 minutes. I mean, the man was just brilliant and absolutely fearless. But here's the twist. Even with a record like that, when World War I rolled around, his superiors actually called him unreliable. They turned down all his requests to lead men in combat in Europe. Why? Well, his independent, aggressive style was seen as a huge liability. They basically thought he was a loose cannon. And that independent streak was on full display when he took a break from the Marines to become Philadelphia's Director of Public Safety. He went to war with corruption and bootlegging, and he did it so fiercely that he ended up ticking off the entire city's political machine and was eventually forced out. The final nail in the coffin for his career came in 1930. He was the most senior Major General in the Corps, the obvious choice to become the next commandant. But he got passed over. He was just seen as too controversial, too much of a firebrand. For him, it was the ultimate slap in the face, and he put in for retirement right after. And this, right here, is where Smedley Butler's second life really kicks off. He was no longer a soldier bound by military rules. He became something totally different, a political whistleblower. And what he had to say was absolutely staggering. So in late 1933, Butler goes before a congressional committee with a story that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. He claims he was approached to be part of a secret conspiracy, a plot, he said, that was being cooked up by some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in America. We're talking titans of industry and Wall Street bankers. And their goal? Nothing short of a military takeover of the government, to throw President Franklin D. Roosevelt out of the White House. And they wanted him, Smedley Butler, America's greatest soldier, to lead it. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds completely insane, right? A total fantasy. But the congressional committee that actually investigated his claims came to a jaw-dropping conclusion. They found that, yeah, there was truth to his story. These conversations had actually happened. And this is where the story gets even weirder. So on one hand, you have an official report from Congress saying Butler's story checks out. But on the other hand, most of the media just laughed it off, calling it a hoax. The powerful men Butler names denied everything, nobody was ever prosecuted, and the whole thing just kind of vanished. For Butler, that whole business plot mess seemed to cement a new way of looking at the world. So he set off on his final mission. Not on some foreign battlefield, but on the public speaking circuit, trying to convince the American people of a powerful truth he believed he'd finally uncovered. You can really see his transformation in photos like this one. Here he is with the Bonus Army, thousands of World War I vets who marched on Washington demanding the pay they were promised. He was no longer a general for the establishment, he was a champion for the regular guy, the common soldier. He boiled down his whole new philosophy into a short, fiery book called War is a Racket. And the main point is this. He argued that most wars aren't really about patriotism or democracy, they're about profit. They're fought to protect the money and investments of the super wealthy. And this is how he answered that big question we started with. He just laid it all out there, in his own words. He looked back at his entire heroic career and came to the conclusion that he wasn't a hero at all. He was, as he put it, muscle for Wall Street, a gangster for capitalism. It was his great public confession. For the rest of his days, right up until he died in 1940, Butler traveled all over the country as one of America's most famous anti-war voices. He was an incredibly popular speaker, and he donated a lot of the money he earned to charities that helped the unemployed. Which really just leaves us with this final question. How do we remember Smedley Butler? Was he a true patriot who spoke a hard truth that nobody wanted to hear? A hero who saw the light? Or was he something else? His two completely different lives force us to ask some really tough questions, and his story is just as complicated and polarizing today as it ever was.